The central theme of my talk is on persistence. So, several years ago, the young me left school and I needed to survive. I'm sure that's a central theme that has gone through some of the stories you've heard already, right? So, I needed to survive. And I realized, like I said, when they asked me what I could say, and I said, I thought for a while and I got back to them eventually and I said, persistent. Because I realized that that's one thread that has been consistent in my story. Because I've refused to give up, I've refused to quit. Fast forward close 1998, I think at about that, things were really tough, right? And I needed to survive. I'm out of school. I needed to survive. I went, I started shooting. I had to get a camera. I would go loan cameras to shoot. But prior to all of this time, I had seen a story of a young German boy who was into business, right? And he would go to the southeast in Asia and get some stuff that was needed in Germany. He was still a very young boy. He's barely 12 at the time. Because I read a lot. I read a lot of the foreign magazines. I would go look for them and I would go to, how many of you know those standing committees? I don't know if they still do them now at the vendor stand. Standing committees. Do they still do them? Okay, so I used to be a member of the standing committees at the vendor stand as as a young boy. So that was how much I loved to read um, current affairs and all of that stuff. So this particular magazine caught my attention, and I wanted to be like that boy. I wanted to be a business tycoon that early. So um, it led me into trying to do a lot of stuff, right? Including, there was a time I wanted to, way before it became fashionable to put signs on street lights, to put, on street poles several years back, before 2000, right? I had gone to Port Harcourt City Council to ask for permission. I mean, my small mind, I'd gone to Port Harcourt City Council to ask for permission to put signs on the board, on the poles on a road. Um, no, I later found out, hey, I needed to go to Federal Ministry of Works because it was a federal road, right? So that's just to give you an idea. The same me, because I needed to survive, had to go work for a garbage collection company called Garbage King. I don't know if anybody in this hall ever remember a company called Garbage King in Port Harcourt several years ago. Okay? Now, why am I telling all of that story? Something is important. It was interesting, it was necessary for me to survive. So, at some point in my life, my dreams started coming true because I needed to now start a company. A lot of you know me for Startup South. I'm not sure a lot of you know Havilah Hills because that's actually the company that gave birth to Startup South. Startup South is not a company, and till tomorrow we don't want to run it like a company, right? Happyland Hills is still the company, but the story of Happyland Hills is a story of persistence. It's a story that started because, as someone who had learned to do graphics by myself, I would go take jobs, printing jobs, from people who needed that service. I could not use the computer, so I would go to a business center and I would want for them to do my job. And in the process of them trying to do my job, I was observing what they were doing. Right? And then at some point, they are too busy to do my work, but there's a spare system sitting down somewhere, and I will beg them that I can use the system to do my job, to start my own job. I had not gone to learn to use the computer anywhere. I was just observing what they were doing. And then I started working. So I would sleep, number one, Mogu Street had a company called Alpha System several years back. It was the topmost computer separation, printing separation outfit in Port Harcourt at the time. Almost everyone who did printing in Port Harcourt used, or who did good printing in Port Harcourt, used Alpha Systems those days. So Ade was one of the boys who was working in that place. He's a relative to the founder, and Ade would sleep in this place. So once in a while, I would sleep with Ade. I'm supposed to be their client, but because Ade would sleep to walk through the night, I would sleep in the place just to observe what Ade is doing. And Ade was the only one who would allow me try to practice using the computer to create my own job. So I would do the design and I would take to the client. So I did that until I bought my own computer and started using it in my mom's house, right? And then I registered my first business, which was H Concepts. H Concepts became Happyland Hills eventually, right? And not quite long after we started Happyland Hills, doing all the jobs we were doing, some of the clients I worked for decided to invest in my company. And they put in 3 million naira into my company as an investment because we had a project that we felt was novel. So what was that? Using screens like this, I'm sure you see it around now. It's popular now, but when we started doing it, it wasn't popular, okay? Using screens like this, putting it in heavily trafficked sites, and then feeding adverts to those screens remotely. So we created a product called SpotVue. I don't know how many of you ever saw SpotVue. SpotVue, SpotVue. We created a product called SpotVue. We got an investment to create that product. But guess what? As soon as we collected the money, the same month we collected SpotVue money, oh, by the way, I had inherited my church's former office. My pastor was very magnanimous and had to give me the office that the church had vacated on Emekuku Street. It was a two-bedroom space on the road. So I had inherited that space. I inherited the remaining rent, right? And then, just as we received the investment and we were ready to scale that business, Aniche happened. Do you know what that meant? I don't think you know. What does it mean? Thank you. So there was demolition, and that office was demolished. So it took me back to square one. We had to take oh, sorry, I didn't tell you. I had just renewed the rent. I had exhausted the rent that I inherited, and I just renewed the rent. And then the demolition happened. So I had to move some of my stuff back to the house, to my one-room apartment then, and continued from there. It's the reason I talk about persistence, right? So we launched SpotVue, and then we thought it was a novel stuff. People should die about it. They should be crazy when they hear about it. So we hit the road trying to market SpotVue, right? A few people bought ad space and gave us money, but we realized that because we were operating in Port Harcourt, we were ahead of our time. And the screens, I think the screen should still be somewhere at Image Diagnostic Center, one of the places where we first put it up, right? Now, when we thought that was, what's it called? We thought it was bad enough. We stopped SpotVue. We couldn't continue with SpotVue. And then we focused on our core business at Havilah Hills. So not quite long after that, we got a new space on Mbonu Street. It was another 2-bedroom space somewhere in no, not Mbonu, Hato Street, right? We got that space and we furnished it, equipped it, and we started doing our normal job at Happyland Hills and everything seemed fine until the militancy happened and business was very slow. But guess what? It was at this point that it hit us that, listen, something is missing. We're doing some things very wrong. We've been doing things wrong all the while. And apart from the fact that we were doing things wrong, okay, what we were doing wrong is that we were concentrating our business in Port Harcourt. Okay? We were focusing our business in Port Harcourt. And it occurred to me that, listen, I started making an analysis because at the time when we were at Ohato Street, we had built a solution, an accounting software, which was OneSuite Accounting. We were trying to market OneSuite for SMEs to use. We felt, I'm sure Nyedum will remember us marketing OneSuite to her for her school. We wanted SMEs to use this accounting software because what existed then were things like Sage and Peachtree Accounting, and we thought that businesses wanted to keep their books, but they didn't have access to the software. So we didn't understand the problem, but we built a solution all the same. You understand? So we built a system, and then we were trying to market the system, and we're looking for investment. I hope you understand where I'm going to now. We built a solution to a problem we thought we understood, and then we are looking for money to market the solution. Is it connecting now? So we were looking for money to market the solution, so we're going to pitch for investors in Lagos and going for all manner of competitions. And nobody was interested in giving us money. Till my co-founder left. The co-founder for OneSuite left. Because the money had run down. The money I had run down. So, it occurred to me that I had to sit down and do an analysis and ask myself, people are in Lagos. People get money in Lagos. There was this guy, Jason. Jason will always tell you how Lagos, he's focused on Lagos and nowhere else. So I started asking myself a question, what is the problem? What is the issue with Lagos? Why is he focusing on Lagos and nowhere else? And he realized that, listen, businesses, every investor is interested in a market. Every business should be able to focus on a market. That market has to be tangible enough to warrant a return on the investment. Do you understand? So, you are more likely to get a bigger market where you have more population than when you have a small set of people in a place. So, what is the issue? What is going right for Lagos is that you had over 20 million people inside a place called Lagos, which was very accessible. Okay? And here we are. I'm sure that if I ask some of you that have businesses, your focus, your first answer will be Port Harcourt. Port Harcourt, River State as a whole, has about 5 to 6 million people at most. True or false? Port Harcourt is not up to 5, at most 3 million people. True or false? Huh? Port Harcourt, not River State. Okay? So the problem is you don't have enough market. So it's going to be difficult for you to build product that people can invest in, that can scale. But look at it this way. There are people in Lagos from Lekki to say Ikeja or even beyond Ikeja takes them more than 4 hours to do. How many of you understand that? But if you're in Port Harcourt and you want to go to Benin now, Benin is about the farthest in the south from here. It takes you about 4 hours. True? If you're in Port Harcourt and you want to go to Enugu, it takes you about 4 hours. True? So what that means is that I can build a business in Port Harcourt and I can service people in Benin and I can service people in Enugu. And if you combine the entire south and the southeast, you will have 60 million people. 60 million is bigger than 20 million. So if it turns out that we were not building for scale, we were not hungry enough. And like Steve Jobs would say, he said you should stay hungry and stay foolish. So I found out that my quest to survive was clouding my opportunities. So I needed to take my eyes away from survival, and I wanted to now begin to live for generations. Okay? So I would like, if not for anything, I would like to encourage and advise every one of us. It's okay to want to survive, but it's even better to live for the generations coming. And the only way you can do that is to build things that can scale. There will be times that you will have the ups, there will be times you will have downs. Life is up and down, but if you persist, you will succeed. I like to encourage everybody. I live my life today because I want to live for that boy sitting there and his generation, his friend. I ask myself every time, when I am gone, what will he and his friends say about the work that I have done? So I want to persist because I want to make impact for their generation. And I'd like to ask you if you can join us to do the same. That's essentially what Startup South is about. And that's a brief part of my story. Thank you for listening to me. And I hope I've not bored you too much today.